The early morning mist clung to the front lawn like it didn't want to let go. Rachel Cole stood barefoot on the porch, arms wrapped tightly around her robe, sipping lukewarm coffee as her husband Daniel loaded the last of his gear into the trunk of his old silver SUV. "Did you pack the extra water bottles?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Daniel glanced up and smiled, that crooked grin that had once made her heart flutter. "Yeah, I packed more than enough. You'd think I was prepping for an expedition to Mars the way you're worrying." She managed a thin smile. "Well, you know me, always the worrier." He walked over and kissed her forehead. She caught a whiff of his cologne, woodsy, clean, and something inside her clenched. Something unspoken lingered between them, as if neither of them wanted to say what they were thinking. They hadn't had a real conversation in weeks. Too many late nights at his office, too many early mornings filled with rushed school drop-offs and tired silences. "How long will it be this time?" she asked, softer now. "5 days tops. I'll be back Sunday afternoon. Promise." "You said that last time." His eyes flickered, something quick, unreadable, and then he looked away. I need the quiet. "Rach, the mountains help clear my head. You know that." "I know," she said, though she didn't really. He hadn't always been like this. Daniel used to be her rock, solid, dependable. But since losing his job 2 years ago and getting back into finance as a freelance consultant, something had shifted. He was more distracted, sometimes on edge. She had chalked it up to stress, midlife burnout. Whatever it was, it carved more distance between them with each trip he took. Daniel leaned down and kissed her again, this time on the lips. Gentle, almost apologetic. "Tell the kids I'll bring them something from the trail, maybe a pine cone for Grace's collection." Rachel nodded. "They'll like that." She watched as he got into the car and started the engine. The SUV coughed, once then hummed to life. He backed out of the driveway slowly, hand raised in a half-hearted wave. Then he was gone, swallowed by the mist and the curve of the road. Rachel stood there long after the sound of the car had disappeared, coffee gone cold in her hands. The first day passed in a blur of school runs, laundry, and refereeing the twins. Endless bickering. Sam, now 16 and growing into his father's tall frame, holed up in his room playing guitar. Lily, ever the quiet one, barely spoke a word over dinner. Grace and Ben bickered over whose turn it was to feed the dog, and baby Noah threw his mashed peas on the floor with glee. Rachel went to bed exhausted, but content. Daniel would be home in a few days. Everything would go back to normal. But by the third day, when she hadn't gotten the usual satellite text, "All good. Love you," a sliver of unease began to creep in. She tried to ignore it at first, told herself the reception was probably bad, or he just forgot. But Daniel never forgot to check in, not after what happened to that hiker last summer, the one they'd found weeks later at the bottom of a ravine. On the 4th day, when Sunday came and went with no sign of him, her stomach turned to lead. By Monday morning, she called the ranger station. "Name?" the dispatcher asked. "Daniel Cole. He was supposed to be hiking in the White Pines Trail area." "Do you know which trailhead?" "He mentioned the Northern Loop. Said he wanted to try something." "No." There was a pause, the click of keys. "No check-in from a Daniel Cole in our system," the dispatcher finally said. "But we'll put in a request for search and rescue. What vehicle was he driving?" "A silver Toyota 4Runner, 2012, license plate 7XF308. "We'll notify you when we have anything, ma'am." By Tuesday, search crews were combing the trails. Helicopters flew overhead. Dogs sniffed along winding paths. Volunteers in orange vests swarmed the forest. But there was nothing. No sign. No car. No Daniel. On Wednesday night, Rachel sat on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the news with the sound off. The kids were asleep. At least she hoped they were. Sam hadn't said more than 3 words to her in days. Lily was spending more time drawing in her sketch pad than doing homework. The twins had stopped fighting, which scared her more than when they did. She jumped when a knock came at the door. Her heart surged. Daniel! But when she opened it, 2 state troopers stood beneath the porch light, hats in hand. "Mrs. Cole," the older one asked gently. Rachel's legs went weak. She nodded. "I'm Officer Landers. This is Officer Shaw. We're part of the search and rescue coordination team. Mind if we come in?" She stepped aside, numb. They sat with her at the kitchen and table, offered her water, gave her practiced soft voices, told her the search was being scaled back due to weather conditions and resource limits, that they'd found no signs of Daniel's vehicle, campsite, or gear. "It's possible he changed routes," Officer Shaw said, "or left the area." Rachel gripped the edge of the table. "No, he wouldn't do that. He promised he'd be back." Landers sighed. "We're not saying it's over, just that we're reallocating teams, unless we get new information." He let the sentence trail off. Rachel stared at the spot on the table where Daniel used to rest his coffee mug each morning, where the condensation always left a faint ring. She traced the circle with her finger. That night, after the officers left, she lay in bed with Noah tucked against her side. The silence of the house felt like it had weight, like it was pressing down on the roof, squeezing the air from the walls. Her phone buzzed, heart leaping. She snatched it up. But it was just a text from her sister. "He'll come back, Rach. He always does." But this time, Rachel wasn't so sure. She looked out the window at the dark stretch of road beyond her yard. Something felt different this time, and deep down, in the quietest part of herself, the place where her fears whispered and clawed, she wondered if Daniel Cole had ever meant to come home at all. Rachel had never known how loud silence could be until the 3rd night without Daniel. It wasn't just the absence of his voice or the weight of his body in bed next to hers. It was the stillness in the house that roared in her ears. The kids had stopped asking when Dad would be home. That scared her more than their questions ever had. On Thursday morning, she drove to the ranger station herself. The air was cold, her breath fogging up the windshield as she navigated the winding 2-lane roads into the foothills. Patches of early snow clung to the grass under the trees, and the evergreens loomed like sentinels along the road. As she pulled into the gravel lot, she saw a few search vehicles parked nearby. Most of them were empty now. Inside, the ranger station smelled of wood smoke and coffee. A grizzled man with silver stubble and tired eyes looked up from behind the desk. "You're Daniel Cole's wife," he said before she even introduced herself. Rachel nodded. "I want to help. Please." He shook his head gently. "Ma'am, we've covered every mile of that trail and then some. Dogs didn't catch a scent. Helicopter scans came up empty. We haven't even found tire tracks." "No tire tracks?" "Nothing. It's like he never arrived." Rachel's mouth went dry. She clutched the strap of her purse tighter. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "He's been to that trail before. He knows it. He wouldn't just vanish." "Ma'am," the ranger said softly, "I've worked here 26 years. Seen people get lost. Seen people fake it." "Two," her eyes snapped to his. "Are you saying he faked this?" "I'm saying we don't know. But right now there's no evidence he ever made it to White Pines." Rachel drove home in a daze. The cold had seeped into her bones, and no amount of turning up the heat seemed to shake it. When she walked through the front door, Grace and Ben were sitting on the living room floor, building a Lego fort. Lily was curled up in the armchair, sketch pad in her lap, earbuds in. Sam wasn't home from school yet. "Where's Noah?" Rachel asked, setting down her keys. "In his crib," Lily said without looking up. Rachel paused. "You got him down for a nap?" "Yeah." It startled her how competent her 14-year-old daughter had become in such a short time. A week ago, Lily was arguing about screen time. Now she was quietly holding the household together while Rachel fell apart. Rachel walked upstairs and peeked into the nursery. Noah was snoring gently, a stuffed giraffe clutched in his tiny hand. She closed the door softly and pressed her forehead to the frame, eyes burning. She needed to hold it together, for them. That evening she got a call from the police. No new developments. We're treating it as a missing person. But if we don't find any sign of foul play or accident, this could move into the voluntary disappearance category, the officer said. Voluntary? Rachel repeated, stunned. We'll keep looking, he assured her. But you should consider reaching out to a private investigator. Sometimes they find things our hands are tied on. Rachel hung up with shaking hands. She walked into the kitchen, made mac and cheese from the box, and burned it because she forgot to set a timer. The kids didn't complain. They ate in silence. After dinner, Sam finally spoke. "This is crap," he muttered, stabbing his fork into the overcooked noodles. Rachel looked up. "Excuse me?" He wouldn't just disappear. You don't vanish off a trail like that unless something happened. "I know," Rachel said gently. "No, you don't," Sam snapped. "You're just sitting here, making dinner like it's normal, like he didn't just—" "Sam," Lily interrupted sharply, but Rachel raised her hand. "No, it's okay," she said, her voice trembling. "He's right." She stood slowly. "Tomorrow, I'm driving back to the trail. I'll search it myself if I have to." Sam met her eyes. For a moment, she saw the same helpless fury reflected there that she felt in her own chest. The next morning, Rachel bundled up and left the kids with her friend and neighbor Jenny, a kind-hearted nurse with a brood of her own. Jenny didn't ask questions, just gave Rachel a thermos of coffee and a long hug. "I hope you find something," she whispered, "even if it's nothing." Rachel parked near the north trailhead of white pines. The forest loomed in every direction, tall, dark trees packed in tight like a wall. She hadn't hiked in years. She wasn't dressed for it. Her boots were more fashion than function, and her coat wasn't thick enough. But she walked anyway. She followed the path she'd seen Daniel photograph countless times. Little, wooden markers, soft moss underfoot. She called his name. She checked under fallen logs. She scanned for clothing, scraps of tarp, anything, nothing. Just birdsong and the crunch of her boots. After 2 hours, her legs were sore, and her cheeks were raw from the wind. She sat on a stump and pulled out the thermos. As she sipped, she reached into her pocket for tissues and instead found a folded receipt. Her fingers stilled. It was from a gas station, dated 2 days before Daniel left. But it wasn't from anywhere near home. It was from a town 2 hours north. She didn't remember him going there, didn't remember him saying anything about it. She stared at the receipt. The total, 68 to 42s, fuel, snacks, and something else. Something scribbled in pen on the back. Just a name, Alex W. Rachel's stomach turned. That night, after she got the kids to bed, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She typed Alex W. and the name of the town into the search bar. Nothing concrete came up, just a few LinkedIn profiles. And a cafe. Then she searched her husband's name. She'd done it before, back when he first started acting strange, staying late at the office, locking his phone. But this time, something new popped up. A legal case from 3 years ago, a financial fraud investigation. Daniel's old firm had been under investigation. His name wasn't listed as a defendant, but he was cited in the witness logs. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her pulse hammering. He never told her. Why wouldn't he tell her? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of something falling upstairs. A thump. She rushed to the hallway and up the stairs, her mother's instinct kicking in. Sam was standing outside his room, pale. "What happened?" she whispered. "I heard something in the attic," he said, voice tight. Rachel looked up at the ceiling. The attic door in the hallway hung slightly ajar. Rachel stared at the attic door, her breath caught in her throat. The narrow seam of darkness above her pulsed with quiet tension, like something waiting. Sam stood beside her, fists clenched, eyes locked on the ceiling. "I swear I heard something," he whispered. Rachel nodded slowly. "Get your brother." Take the others downstairs." But now Sam, reluctantly, he turned and slipped into Noah's room, scooping the baby from his crib before gathering Grace and Ben, who had already peered into the hall with wide, anxious eyes. Within moments, the hallway was empty, except for Rachel and the yawning black slit in the ceiling. She grabbed the broom from the hall closet and nudged the attic door open. The wooden panel swung downward with a faint creak, releasing a puff of stale air. Step by step she climbed the ladder. Each rung creaked under her weight, each breath misted in the cold air above. The attic was dark. She flipped the switch near. The entrance and the bulb overhead flickered to life. Dim, yellow, buzzing, boxes, old baby clothes, Christmas decorations, Daniel's old army duffel. Everything as it had been. Nothing was out of place. No rodents, no intruders, no sign of what made the noise. Just the silence pressing in around her like cotton in her ears. Still, she stayed for several minutes, scanning, waiting. And finally, she climbed back down. Downstairs, the kids were crowded around the living room, the glow of a cartoon trying to mask the unease. "It was nothing," Rachel said as she entered. "Probably a squirrel in the roof line. I'll check it out again tomorrow." They didn't look convinced, but no one argued. Later, when the house was still, Rachel sat in bed with her laptop open again. She couldn't stop thinking about the receipt, about the scribbled name, Alex W. There was something else, too. She'd searched Daniel's name earlier and found that court case, a footnote she couldn't get out of her head. He had been listed as a witness, but the article was vague. The financial firm had collapsed, the CEO had done time, and several others had testified in the trial. Had Daniel been one of them? Was that why he was acting strange? Had someone threatened him? Rachel opened Daniel's email account, his personal one. She still had the password. He never changed it, even though she'd asked him to a dozen times. As the inbox loaded, her pulse ticked higher. The newest email stood out immediately. From unknown sender 407@gmail.com. Subject, "You know what this is." Sent 4 days ago. She clicked. "You said it was done. If you're lying, I'll find out. The woods won't keep your secrets forever." Her stomach clenched. She stared at the words until they blurred. Who sent it? Had he read it before he left? Or worse, was that why he left? The next morning, Rachel dropped the kids off at school, bundled Noah into his car seat, and drove 2 hours north to the gas station listed on the receipt. The building was small, tucked between a logging road and a diner with chipped paint and a flickering open sign. She stepped into the gas station, Noah on her hip. The bell above the door jingled. The air smelled of coffee, motor oil, and pine-scented air fresheners. A bearded man behind the counter looked up. "Help you?" Rachel stepped forward and held up the receipt. "My husband was here a few days ago. I was hoping you could tell me if you remember him." The man took the paper, squinting at it. "Yeah, I remember him. Tall guy. Military type?" Rachel's throat tightened. "Yes." He filled up, bought some snacks, asked about cell. "Coverage around White Pines Trail. Said he was meeting someone for a quick hike." Rachel blinked. "Meeting someone?" "Yep." Said it wasn't the first time either. Mentioned a name. Alex, I think. Her heart skipped. "Did he leave with anyone?" The clerk shook his head. "Not from here. Just drove off." Rachel swallowed. "Do you have surveillance footage?" He gestured toward a camera above the register. "I'd need a subpoena to hand anything over. You'd have to go through the sheriff." She offered a tight nod and turned to leave as she buckled Noah back. In the car, her thoughts spun. Daniel hadn't just gone hiking. He'd met someone he already knew, someone named Alex, and he hadn't told her. That afternoon, Rachel stood in front of her closet, staring at Daniel's section. His boots sat untouched, his shirts hung perfectly pressed, a few of them still smelling faintly of his cologne. She opened the top drawer of his dresser. Bills, business cards, a pocket knife, At the back of the drawer was a folder. She flipped it open. Inside, bank statements, old yellowed copies of emails. One printed article from 3 years ago. It was the same article she found online, but with a handwritten note scribbled across the top. He lied. Look deeper. A second note at the bottom. Alex W. Ty Whitmore. Rachel's breath hitched. Alex Whitmore. That name meant something. She ran to her own room, pulled an old Christmas card from a box on the shelf. The sender, Daniel's college. Roommate Alex Whitmore, a friend she hadn't heard about in years. She remembered vaguely a holiday card with a return address in Oregon. But he had moved, hadn't he? She searched his name online, this time adding fraud and trial to the query. And there it was, Alex Whitmore, former junior partner at the same firm. Implicated, but never convicted. Daniel had testified. Rachel stared at the screen, horror coiling in her gut. Had Daniel met with Alex? Had he been trying to clean up something from the past? Was he being blackmailed? That night Rachel didn't sleep. She laid in bed, watching the shadows crawl across the ceiling, her mind racing with questions. In the dark, Noah stirred in his crib beside her. She reached down, stroked his back, and then she heard it again. A thump. Not in the attic this time, in the basement. She slipped out of bed and crept down the stairs, heart pounding. The door to the basement stood ajar. She flipped the light switch. Nothing. Burned out bulb. Of course. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. Step by careful step she descended. The beam of light cut through the dust and darkness. The basement smelled of damp concrete and forgotten things. The old water heater groaned softly. In the corner. Then she saw it. Footprints, wet, muddy footprints across the concrete, fresh, too fresh, and they weren't hers. Rachel didn't move. The beam from her phone lit the muddy footprints, trailing across the cold concrete of the basement. Floor, large, boot-sized, unmistakably fresh. They led from the far wall to the base of the stairs, stopping just a few feet from where she stood. Her fingers tightened around her phone, heart thundering in her ears. Someone's been here. The thought slammed into her like a wave. She turned, bolted up the stairs, and locked the basement door behind her, pressing her back to the wood. She dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? There are fresh footprints in my basement. My husband went missing 2 weeks ago, and now someone's been in my house. Is anyone currently in the basement? I don't know. I didn't hear them leave. Ma'am, stay on the line. Officers are en route. Can you gather your children and move to a secure location? Rachel rushed to the living room, where the kids were sleeping in their makeshift fort. She scooped Noah into her arms, nudged the others gently. Come on, we're going to the car. Now. Ben rubbed his eyes. What's happening? Just come with me. She ushered them all outside, locking the front door behind them. Within minutes, police arrived. 2 officers in Navy uniforms, guns drawn as they swept the basement. But they found nothing. No intruder, no sign of forced entry, just the prints, half-dried mud, the trail smeared and incomplete. Rachel stood at the top of the stairs as Officer Mendez walked up to her, brow furrowed. You said your husband went missing 2 weeks ago? She nodded. Daniel Cray, Army vet, went out hiking and never came back. He didn't take anything with him. No wallet, no phone. His truck's still in the driveway. Mendez scribbled in his notebook. And you just found these prints tonight? I heard a noise last night in the attic, and tonight I heard something below. The basement light wouldn't turn on, so I used my phone. He nodded slowly. Could be a transient, someone using the house as shelter. Then why didn't they take anything? Why didn't they leave the basement? He paused. Maybe they panicked. We'll get the prints photographed, and I'll have a unit do a few extra passes by your place. Keep your doors locked. Rachel stared into the basement as he left. Her fingers tingled with dread. The prints were no coincidence. Someone was sending her a message. The next morning, Rachel called the only person she could think of who might know about Daniel's past. His sister, Lynn. Rach, Lynn answered, her voice tired. Everything okay? I need to ask you something. Did Daniel ever mention Alex Whitmore to you? Lynn paused. Whitmore from college? Yes, I think he's involved in Daniel's disappearance. There was silence on the line. Then, you should talk to Mom. What? Why? She got a letter the day after the news reported that Daniel was missing. No return address. It only said one thing, not an accident. She didn't want to tell you, thought it might have been a sick prank. Rachel's skin prickled. Why didn't you call me? She told me not to. But Rach, if Daniel was mixed up in something, I think he was. I think someone's threatening us now. Rachel drove to Margaret Cray's house the next afternoon. The kids stayed with her friend Caroline, and for the first time in weeks, Rachel walked alone. Margaret opened the door with a worried look. Rachel, come in. Inside, the house smelled of lavender and old wood. Margaret moved slowly, her cane thumping the hardwood with every step. I suppose Lynn told you, she said, settling into the armchair near the window. Yes. The letter. Margaret nodded and reached into the side table drawer. She handed over a small envelope. The handwriting was neat, masculine, unfamiliar. Rachel unfolded the note. Not an accident. White Pines has answers? You were right to worry. There was no signature, no explanation. Do you know who sent it? Rachel asked. Margaret shook her head. I thought maybe one of Daniel's army buddies. He was always writing letters. Never. Emails, not for private things. Rachel stared at the message again. White Pines. That was the trail the gas station clerk mentioned. Her mind raced. Daniel had said he was hiking, but White Pines wasn't a beginner trail. It was rugged, unmaintained, and nearly an hour from where the gas station was. He wasn't hiking. He was meeting someone there. Rachel's hands trembled. She had to go. She waited until the weekend. Grace was invited to a sleepover. Ben was at a friend's birthday party, and Caroline offered to watch Sam and Noah. Rachel lied and said she needed to run errands, something about fixing the washing machine. Then she packed her hiking boots, a flashlight, and a printed map of White Pines Trail into Daniel's old rucksack. The drive took almost an hour, winding through the forest until she reached the trailhead. The sky was overcast. The wind whispered through the pines. Rachel stood at the edge of the trail, staring into the woods where her husband may have vanished. She stepped forward. White Pines Trail was overgrown in places. Fallen branches littered the path, and thick roots twisted beneath her boots. She checked Daniel's receipt again. He had purchased gas at 10:43 a.m. If he arrived at White Pines around noon and met someone, what was he here to do? An hour in, Rachel found a clearing with the remnants of a fire pit, old embers, crumbled logs, a bottle cap half buried in the dirt, and something else, a scrap of paper, wedged beneath a rock. She pulled it out. It was the corner of a printed photograph, torn. Rachel turned it over. It was Daniel, sitting at this very campfire, smiling. Next to him sat a man, blurry, only half in frame. Rachel could barely make out the face, but her gut told her the truth. That was Alex Whitmore. Her heart thudded. She scanned the area. Had they camped here? Hidden something? She moved toward the trees beyond the fire pit and spotted a glint of silver among the leaves, a metal box, partially buried. She dug with her hands until she could lift it free. It was a military-style lockbox. No key. Rachel used a flat rock to smash the lock. It took several hits, but finally it gave way. Inside, photos, dozens of them. Some were of Daniel. Most looked like surveillance. Blurry shots of him leaving the grocery store, getting gas, walking the kids to school. And then, others, photos of Alex in suits, with people Rachel didn't recognize. Bank records, receipts, notes written in Daniel's hand. They buried it in Cayman. Paper trail runs through Jackson and Moore Latidid. Threatened the kids. Said if I talk again, they'll come for us. Alex is watching. Rachel sat on the forest floor, wind chilling her to the bone. Daniel hadn't just disappeared. He was running, or worse. He'd been taken to keep him silent, and someone was still watching. As Rachel walked back down the trail, the sun began to set. Shadows stretched long between the trees, and the wind picked up, whispering through the canopy, and then she heard it. Footsteps behind her. She turned. Nothing. She quickened her pace, the box clutched to her chest. Another sound, branches snapping. Deliberate, close. She broke into a jog, eyes darting between the trees, then a voice, low male, echoing through the woods. Rachel. She stopped cold. The voice was familiar. Daniel? No, it was distorted, wrong, mocking. She ran, didn't stop until she reached the car, threw the box in the trunk, and drove. That night, back at home, Rachel spread the contents of the lockbox across her kitchen table. She snapped photos of everything, backed them up to a cloud drive. She didn't know who was watching her, but she was done being afraid. Daniel had tried to expose something dangerous, and she would finish what he started, even if it killed. Her Rachel didn't sleep that night. Instead, she pored over every document, every photo, every half-coded note Daniel had hidden in that forest lockbox. She created a timeline, cross-referenced names and addresses, and circled the same company name that came up over and over again, Jackson and Moore Limited. According to the bank statements she found, it was a shell corporation, laundering millions through offshore accounts linked to black market weapons trading. It was the kind of thing Daniel might have stumbled into through his military contacts, and it explained the silence, the threats, the fear. Daniel had tried to blow the whistle, and someone had silenced him. Rachel sat at the table, staring at the photo of him in the woods, his last smile seated beside the man who was once his best friend, Alex Whitmore. If Alex was behind this, she clenched her fists. She couldn't go to the police. They'd already written Daniel off. Even the FBI had ghosted her after following up, but there was one name on Daniel's papers she hadn't called yet: Dorian Knox, a journalist, investigative reporter. The notes simply said, "If anything happens to me, trust him." Rachel met Dorian Knox at a diner 2 towns over. He was tall, lean, with sharp eyes and a worn notebook he never stopped scribbling in. She slid the manila folder across the booth. He opened it. His expression changed almost instantly. "Where did you get this?" "My husband hid it. He's missing. He left me a trail." Knox leaned back. "Rachel, this is enough to trigger a congressional investigation. This is big. Bigger than one guy disappearing. Do you know how dangerous it is to hold this?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Yes." Dorian moved fast. Within 48 hours, he contacted his editor, lined up secure servers, and brought in a whistleblower protection agency. Rachel gave him everything, asking for only one thing in return: find my husband. Knox couldn't promise that, but he promised he'd try. Then everything changed. A week after Knox broke the story online, complete with photos, documents, and an expose titled "The Silencing of a Soldier," the threats started. Rachel returned home one evening to find a single white envelope taped to her door. Inside was a Polaroid. It was Daniel, eyes bruised, face gaunt, holding that day's newspaper. He was alive, but the back of the photo had a chilling message: "Stop digging, final warning." Rachel collapsed to the floor, sobbing. He was alive, and he was a hostage. Knox doubled security. Rachel and the children were moved into a safe house, her address scrubbed from online records. He filed an emergency petition for federal protection, citing whistleblower retaliation and organized criminal threats. But Rachel wasn't done. She wanted Daniel back. That was when the call came. It was 3:12 a.m. Her phone buzzed once, a blocked Number, she answered. Silence, then static, then Rachel, a hoarse voice, familiar, his voice. Daniel, she whispered. I don't have long, he said, breathless. They're watching me. I'm in Honduras. They're moving me again tomorrow, a private airfield near La Ceiba. I'm coming to get you, she said before thinking. No, you can't. Just tell Knox. He'll know what to do. And Rachel, his voice broke. Tell the kids I never stopped fighting. Never stopped loving them. The line cut out. Knox acted immediately. He had contacts at Interpol. The airfield Daniel mentioned was known to be used by smugglers. Within 36 hours, a sting operation was arranged, quietly, off the books. Honduran authorities and a U.S. task. Force surrounded the airstrip. They found Daniel chained, drugged, half-starved, but alive, and beside him, Alex Whitmore, caught red-handed, boarding a jet with forged passports and nearly $3 million in cash. When Rachel got the call, she collapsed again, but this time from relief. The wind hadn't taken Daniel. Men had, but she had pulled him back. 2 months later, the Crays returned home, all of them. Daniel's recovery was slow. There were wounds on his body no one could see, nightmares, muscle loss, flashes of panic. But every morning, he woke up with his family again. Grace painted him, a welcome home banner. Sam wouldn't let go of his leg for a week. Even little Noah, though too young to understand, followed him everywhere like a shadow. Ben never said much, but he gave Daniel his favorite Lego set. And Daniel cried. The case became national news. Cray versus Jackson and Moore resulted in several high-profile arrests, including government officials who had turned a blind eye. Knox won a Pulitzer. Rachel received hundreds of letters from women thanking her for refusing to back down, but she didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a wife who refused to let go. That winter, Daniel stood in the backyard with Rachel, snow crunching beneath their boots. The kids played beside them, building a crooked snowman. I thought you were gone forever, she said. I thought I was too, he whispered. They told me you'd forget me, that you'd give up. I didn't believe them, she leaned into. Him. I never stopped looking. Daniel glanced at the sky where the wind stirred the bare trees. Sometimes I wonder, he murmured, if I hadn't left that trail, if you hadn't followed it. You didn't leave a trail, she said. You left hope. That night, as the kids finally fell asleep and the world felt quiet again, Rachel sat by the fire, Daniel beside her, hand in hers. She realized something. When the wind takes someone, they don't always stay gone. Sometimes they whisper back. And if you listen hard enough, if you refuse to give up, you find your way through the storm. Together.